Good day everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kaylin and this is Foundation First. At Foundation First we are education about education. If you are a parent, if you are a teacher, or if you are just somebody who likes to learn more about education, humans and the way they grow and develop. Make sure to like and subscribe so that you can keep up to date in all the wonderful things that we're going to be learning. In this week's episode, we are doing part 3 of our 3-part series of the importance of play. This week, we are doing the types of play. I'm going to first talk about stages of cognitive development and stages of play. So where the brain is in its development and where the child may be in their stage of play. There are different stages of play depending on their cognitive development, and that is important to know when thinking about the types of play. Before I continue, I am sporting a Starry Night Sky. Over here I am wearing a brooch made by my very good friend Amy Goby. She has a Instagram page called Amy Resin Art and she makes really amazing stuff there. She's super creative and her resin is really great. I'll link her Instagram down below. The first thing I want to talk about is stages of cognitive development. And when we think of this, we think Piaget's 4 stages of cognitive development. The first stage is sensory motor stage. This is from birth to 2. In this stage, children are very much reliant on their sensory input through their sight, touch, smell, etc. This is how they're taking in information, and because they don't have a lot of information to build up from, they are taking in everything around them and just experiencing and finding out more about their concrete world. The next stage of cognitive development is pre-operational stage. Pre-operational stage is from 2 to 6. This pre-operational stage is where children are learning about the concrete world. They don't yet have an understanding of concrete logic. This means that it is very important for them to build up an understanding of the concrete world, what they can touch, feel, see, everything that's a world around them before we move into the abstract when they get a bit older. For example, if you take 2 balls of Play-Doh that are the same size, put it in front of a child in this cognitive stage, and you ask the child which one of these balls has more Play-Doh. And then they say they are both the same. Then you take your hand and squash with one piece of Play-Doh, and then you ask the same question, which ball of Play-Doh has more Play-Doh? And then they'll point to the one that's still in a ball, because what they can see is that one is bigger and that one is smaller. They don't yet have the concrete understanding and concrete logic to know, well, duh, they're both the same. You just squash that one. They're also building up their understanding of language. They have built up a lot of the sounds that they're going to be using, not all, and they are also unable to take other people's point of view. The next one is concrete operational stage. This is when children gain a better understanding of mental operations, doing things in their head, manipulating things in their head. Now they begin to understand concrete logic. They now begin to be able to understand that those 2 balls of Play-Doh are the same size, while the one that's squashed. At this stage, children are still struggling to understand abstract and hypothetical concepts. And last but not least, formal operational stage. This is from ages 12 to adulthood. This is where children now get an understanding of hypothetical and abstract concepts. They now really understand the abstract world, what abstract concepts represent the concrete world. At this point, they have logical thought as well, so they're able to think logically. Now that we've talked about the 4 stages of cognitive development, we're going to briefly discuss the stages of play. And in the different stages of cognitive development, children will engage in the different stages of play. Wherever the child is in their cognitive development will depend on the type of play that they engage in. When we're thinking of the stages of play, we think about Parton's 6 stages of play. The first stage of play is unoccupied play. When children engage in unoccupied play, this is when they are just on their own. They're not considering the people around them. They are just experiencing materials, they're just experiencing materials, different smells, different things that they can take through their senses in the world around them. It's a bit sporadic. There's no planning to it. It's just reactions and experiences and experiments. The next stage of play is solitary play. This is where children play solely and on their own. Some caregivers may be a bit worried about children when they are engaging in solitary play. They may think that they're lonely or unable to socialize, but this type of play is very natural and part of the learning to play process. Remember, when I said that play is intrinsic, it means they don't have to be taught to play. This is something that happens naturally. They have a natural drive to play, but it doesn't mean that their play doesn't develop over time and they learn how to play in different ways as they grow. They are able to explore freely without any barriers and master new personal skills, like new motor or cognitive skills. This prepares them to be able to play with others. The next stage of play is onlooker play. This is where children sit on their own and they watch other children play. This is considered play because when they do this, it's like people watching. When you go to a restaurant and you watch other people socialize, you are learning in that moment. You don't intend to be rude. And this is the same with children. They are watching other children play. What happens when a child uses that toy? Look at them engaging. This is how they play. Maybe I can try that next time. This is a version of them learning. And this is part of the developmental process. It's part of it, and it's not something that we should worry about and something we should encourage instead of discourage with children. It is important for parents and teachers to try and make a distinction between when a child is doing onlooker play and when they are actually feeling lonely and need a little bit more help to socialize with others. The next type of play that you'll hear about often in the educational space is parallel play. This is when small children sit next to one another and play alongside each other, literally parallel to one another. They are not engaging with one another. They may be just playing the same game but not interacting with one another. So they both may have cars that they are driving with, building blocks that they are building their own structures, but they are not engaging and planning and working together. They are just engaging in a similar play but next to one another. Associative play. This marks a significant shift in children's play. This is where children start to socialize and interact with one another when they play. This is when they have less focus on the activity as they did when they were doing solitary play, and more focus on the socialization aspect, working with others when we play. And this is where they get a chance to practice what they viewed and what they learned in onlooker and parallel play. Last but not least is cooperative play. This is where children play with one another. They have gone through all the stages before and they are now playing along with each other and engaging in games that have rules and social norms, that have leaders and followers and push and pull. Cooperative play is an advanced skill. It comes later in the stages of play. It's important to remember that it may be difficult for really small children to play with one another in these games. So expecting a really small child to play with may be asking a little too much for them depending on the stage of their development. Something to consider is if a child has been deprived of play. Just because they are a certain age doesn't mean that they will be at that stage of play if they've been deprived of play for all the years and months before. They will still need to go through the stages of play to get to that point when they can play with children. I, in my class, had a child who was a COVID young child. It's not a COVID baby, but a COVID child. This is where he didn't really have chances to socialize and play with others, so he literally had to learn how to play with children from scratch. He played on his own. He took part in onlooker play. He would just watch. He would then play next to. He would then experiment with playing with others. He didn't really understand the social norms of play. And he was actually called out for being a bully, and that is so untrue. He has been deprived of appropriate play and he was experimenting, and because his social interactions were so far behind, he was learning how to play. So his stage of play is what you would have expected from a 3-year-old, but actually was a child that was in early primary school. And this in itself just shows how important play is, and something that we really need to push and encourage, and to remember that this is a right for children. We should not take play away. It is important, and this is why we are here. Finally, we go to the types of play. When talking about the types of play, we're going to refer to Bob Hughes' taxonomy of play. What is taxonomy? Taxonomy is a fancy term for category.
Ooh.
Some of you in the educational space may be aware of Bloom's taxonomy. This is going to be Bob Hughes' taxonomy of play. One thing to note when thinking about the taxonomy of play and the different categories we have is to remember that all these different types of play are interwoven. You may get different categories of play within one game. You may get role play, you may get symbolic play, etc. just in one game, but it is characterized in different ways. Symbolic play. Symbolic play is exactly that. It's using symbolism. They use different objects, ideas, or actions to reenact or resemble different objects, ideas, and actions. For example, using a block as a cell phone or using a plastic tube as a telescope. The next is rough and tumble play. This can happen from all different types of children. It's not just from one sex. You can see it from girls and boys and everything in the rainbow. So this is where children are rough. They are experiencing their strength. They are pushing, pulling, and they are roughhousing. They are experiencing their physical strength, their flexibility, and their limitations as a human being and a soul in a body. This is often something that they use to burn out a lot of energy. Often you'll see children that doing rough and tumble play, they may be play fighting. This is something we discourage because often it results in tears, but it's very important to distinguish real fighting, to distinguish real fighting to play fighting. Socio-dramatic play. This is when children act out experiences. This may be going to the shops or going to the doctor or cooking a meal at home. Social play. So social play is where children engage in a game that has known rules. There are certain rules to a game and everybody in that game needs to abide by the rules. This may be in a game of tag, or it may be while the children are building something together. Creative play. Creative play is where children are doing exactly that, creating. They're using different materials and different objects to create something new. They are experiencing different mediums and learning about what they can create from their imagination. They are using these materials to alter in a certain way to create something new. This may be doing box construction. Something that I suggest a lot of parents do, and teachers as well, is that you can save a lot of your leftover or your recycled boxes and tissue rolls and bottles and give the child these and you can just let them build. Be creative. My mother did this when I was younger and it was endless amounts of fun. We were so creative with it. And funny enough, it just turns out that in my curriculum where I studied my degree, this was part of the curriculum when teaching preschool, and my mum had no idea. So well done, Mom, in trying to keep us busy. Now is communication play. They are playing using gestures and words such as charades or telling jokes or play acting. They may also do something like I Spy. These are games of communication play. The next is dramatic play. This is where children are assigned certain roles and they then act them out. Often you'll see children who get different roles to play. Often you'll see children who play a family role. This child is the mummy, this is the daddy, and this is the baby, and they play a family going to the beach, for example. This is something you see very often, and the children decide on these roles on their own. This isn't with the encouragement or with the assignment of the teacher. Locomotor play. This is movement just for movement's sake, just because it's fun. Why not? This is when children run, chase, they play tag, they run up and down for 45 minutes, and you as an adult wonder how do they have so much energy, and by the end, when it's lineup, you're staring at them and you would think and hope that they would be calming down, but no, they still have energy, and you wish that you had that energy, but you don't. You can barely stand up from your bed in the mornings. Another one is hide and seek, when they climb a tree or climb a jungle gym and jump from the top. One of the rules very often you'll see in schools is that you don't jump off the jungle gym. You don't want them to break something. Well, it's as much as you have it, they still do it anyway. So they just love that feeling of that motion of falling to the ground. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Now, deep play. Deep play is when children conquer their fears. They try out something that they would have never done before and realize that they are capable of so much more than they thought of. They test their fear of heights. They test their experience of snakes or things that created fear. An example is a child in my class last year. She was very afraid of going on top of the jungle gym, but there was nothing stopping her. She went and she tried it anyway. Even though she was shaking and worried that she was going to fall, she didn't need a parent or a teacher to encourage them to do that. Some children do need encouragement, and this is something if a child is avoiding going on top of a jungle gym and climbing and playing in such a way, they do need to be encouraged to do this, because this type of play is so important to them. It builds their confidence and it builds their resistance and face their fears. If a child is avoiding it completely, this is a red flag for them feeling like they can't or having a certain weakness in that area. It is important for the caregiver and the teacher to encourage them up the jungle gym. Even if it's step by step, day by day, it's really important for their development to engage in deep play, to engage in locomotive play, to really develop them holistically. Exploratory play. This is where children use their different senses to explore. This is their sense of smell, sight, their sense of taste and touch. These are children experiencing the world around them. Often you'll see this during sensory motor stage, where a child just is at this stage where they're just putting everything in their mouth. This is an example of that. But in a preschool space, you need to develop the child's sensory input. So this is encouraging them to play with things of different textures, different scents. It's important for children to experience all the range of smells, tastes, textures, etc. Otherwise, this little door closes up and they really struggle with that, and they may become very defensive in that area. So for example, if a child is tactile defensive, they will not want to touch certain objects with certain textures. This is important for their development, as this can also lead to an avoidance of certain textures when eating, and this can prevent them from eating certain things. The next is fantasy play. This is where children use their imagination. They let their imagination run wild. This is where they experience a make-believe world. In this time of play, children are so engrossed in this make-believe world that they truly believe that it's happening. This type of play, children get so invested in their character and invested in their game. They get so deeply invested in this imaginative play that they will believe in the fact that they have powers, and they'll believe in the way that they can fly, and believe that they'll be the superhero, and at night when everybody's sleeping, they're going to prowl the streets and jump across cityscapes to beat the villains of the city. The next one is imaginative play. This is different to fantasy play, as this is where conventional rules that govern the world around them do not apply. For example, having wings like a bee or jumping like a frog into a pond. Mastery play. Mastery play is where children really engage in the control of the environment around them, the control of the physical and effective ingredients of the world around them, where they're digging a big hole in a sandpit or using cushions to build a fort. Object play. This is play where children use objects in a sequence of hand-eye manipulation. So this is where they may be throwing and catching a ball, or using a paintbrush to paint, or using a pencil to draw. Role play. Role play is when children take on a role that they've seen in the outside world. This is where children engage and explore ways of being. This may be sweeping, it may be cleaning dishes, it may be learning to fold, or it may be pretending to dial a phone and be on a call. Recapitulative play. Recapitulative play. I spent so long trying to figure out how to say the word, and then realized that I had absolutely no idea what I was talking about. So instead of trying to teach something that I didn't understand, I felt it to be necessary to really research it a little bit more and truly find out so I can speak truly to it. Bob Hughes speaks about recapitulative play as a type of play that has been passed down for many generations
over thousands and thousands of years, with our ancestors used certain things in order to survive, which then turned into play, and through generations and genes, etc., that type of play has been passed down to us, as it is a form of learning how to survive. So some people don't agree with this. Some people just say that it's just a natural drive that children are experimenting. When I found this out and I read deeper into it, I thought it was very interesting and something to really think about when seeing children do it, and just think about what humans do to survive and what human evolution is over the years. Recapitulative play is when children play in a sense of certain survival techniques or traditions or rituals that may have been passed down generation after generation. So this may be in the form of building structures to survive. It could also be seen as when children rub sticks together to try to pretend to build a fire. It could also be in the form of sitting around a campfire and telling ghost stories. It's these type of things that through many generations, thousands and thousands of years, and therefore shows up in children's play. So that's it for this episode. Leave some comments down below about some things that you might have seen that can fall in any one of these categories and topics, and let me know what you think, whether you see it in your class as a teacher or whether you see it as a parent. If you liked it, please click the like button below. It really helps with algorithm, and I just want to get this information out to as many people as possible. Really hope you enjoy it. Again, please subscribe. This is super important and I really enjoy doing this. Remember the why in everything that you do, and in that case, remember foundations first. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in my next one. Recapitulative.